Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video, we're going to do a little how-to video. We're going to show you how to play at a very basic level Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. We're going to go through all the basic sort of stuff like what's on a card, movement, your actions, and all of that, just to give you the basic idea of how we play Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. So, without further ado, let's get cracking into it and let's check out how we exactly play this game. And so, before we get started talking about anything on how to play the game, we first need to understand the character cards for Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. So, for starters, you've got your little rune marks here. These are important. These will differentiate, first of all, the one up here, what your model warband is, and over here, the different sort of abilities on your ability card your warband can use. You can see here that this is the Untamed Beasts warband icon. You can find the index of these inside many of the Warcry books. So you've got the Untamed Beasts, so all of these available abilities are for Untamed Beasts. And you can see that the first thing here has this rune mark as well. So you look down here, this is one he can use only. And then all the ones that just require Untamed Beasts, you can see any of your Untamed Beast models would be able to use. Next up, this points cost here, well, is their renown cost. This is how many renown this model costs. There is no differentiate between them. Different warbands have different models worth different points costs. You've then got this circle here. Now, these are sort of your primary stats for the game. So you've got the movement is the arrow, the shield is your defense, and then you've got your wounds here with the skull. You've then got your weapon profile. So all weapon profiles have a range. You can see here, some ranged weapons have a minimum range. You've then got the number of attacks you get, the strength of the attacks, and the damage. You see the damage is split into two different values. That is for the regular damage and the critical damage. We'll get into what criticals do in a second. But you then compare this, you've got all your abilities here. These are the cards you need. You will be able to find all the rules for all of these either in the Warcry boxes for models like the Untamed Beasts, or in the case of, say, Stormcast Eternals, you'll be able to find them in the Sentinels of Order or the corresponding Grand Alliance books for Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. And so now let's talk on how to play out a turn of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. So for starters, at the top of a turn, both players will roll for initiative. You grab 6 dice. Preferably grab these dice of the same colour. You then roll them. So you will be pairing up dice in the corresponding numbers. So you will have, you can see here, 2 4s, 2 5s, and then a 2 and a 6. These are referred as singles. These are referred as doubles. If I was to have 3 5s, that would be referred to as a triple. And then if I was to have 4 5s, that would be referred to as a quad in the game. After you do this, your opponent then would roll the same amount of dice and they would get that. The player who ends the game, or rather ends initiative with the most amount of singles, gets priority and gets to activate the first model for that turn. Now, one extra step is you get to add in what's called a wild dice. It's worth having this dice as a different color to the rest of your dice. And so you and your opponent both secretly choose to add a dice to your numbers here. You could say make a double into 2 6s, or you could make this into a 5 5 if you so wanted to use different abilities. It's worth looking down on your character card. You can see that the Harpoon Snag ability that we're able to use with our first Fang is a triple. So let's go and make a triple here. So now we have our dice. Our opponent might have got more than us, but we'll ignore, I guess, our opponent for the purposes of learning the game. Our opponent then does their own, and then we determine who has the most singles, and that player gets to activate the first model. Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry is done in alternating activations, so you will activate one model with all its activations, and then your opponent will activate one model, and they'll activate all their activations. And so during your turn, you'll get to activate all of your models once. So this model here will get one, and say you had 7 models in your warband, you would activate each one of those 7 models once. This doesn't matter how many models are in yours and your opponent's warbands. If your warband only has 7 models, but your opponent's warband has 15 models, they would activate all 15 in the time you would to activate 7. You would be able to activate 1, they would activate 1 until you can no longer activate 1 model, then they would activate the rest of their models after that. There are ways you can get around this, as we'll talk in what your actions are. And so each turn, each model can perform 2 different actions. You have the ability to move, attack, disengage, and wait. So move is pretty much what it seems. You look at your move characteristic and you move that amount of inches. For the Untamed Beasts here, that is a movement of 4. So you would move from the front of his base and put his front of base at the 4-inch line on a movement gauge like this. So we would move 4 inches. No part of the model may move more than 4 inches. Now, you then have the attack option as well. Now, each model has its own attacks down here, and you can say that the Untamed Beast First Fang here has 2 different attacks. First of all, we have a ranged attack that has a range of 8 inch. So what we do is we get our little measuring gauge again, and we measure to see whether this model is partially within 8 inch, at which point it is. It wouldn't matter whether this model is this close, or if it only just touches the 8 inch line, it is within range so long as part of its base is within 8 inch of our model. For ranged attacks, it's worth mentioning that many do have a minimum value, so it's always worth checking on that, and you cannot use ranged attacks whilst you're in combat, close combat, with another enemy model. So, we're going to use our ranged attack with the First Fang, and how we do this is we then grab 2 dice. So, we grab our 2 dice, because that is how many attacks we get. We check our strength of 4. We then compare this to the toughness of our opponent, which is 3. So, if we are better than our opponent, we would be needing 3s to hit and wound. If we are equal, we would need 4s, and if we are greater, we would need 5s. A 1 is always a failure, and a 6 is always a critical hit. Now, we roll our 2 dice, and you can see we got a 1 and 5 here. So that would mean one of these attacks hit. There is no hitting, wounding, and armor save. There is a singular roll for all of this in Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. So, we then roll a 5, which we've got a strength of 4 versus toughness 3, meaning we needed 3s, so this one would do regular damage, which would take the first number in our damage characteristic. So we would do 2 wounds with our ranged attack. However, were we to roll a 6, we would then get a critical hit, which would enable us to do the second damage characteristic of said attack. This would be the 6, and so we would do the critical hit damage value, which is the greater one of 5 for our ranged attack. Now, remember that triple before, we have the Harpoon Snag ability. So, the fighter may make a bonus attack action. After that attack action, the fighter targeted by that attack makes a bonus move action directly towards the fighter, as if they were jumping a number of inches equal to the value of this ability. So, with these abilities, each model may use 1 per its whole activation, unless it is the last model remaining on your table as part of your warband. In that case, it can use as many doubles, triples, quads as it feels like. So, we're going to use the Harpoon Snag ability and make a bonus attack. This allows us, once again, to make a free attack, because it is not, and we can see we have damaged. So, we now have to move this model towards us. Bonus actions do not take up 1 of your action. We get that action for free. So this means now we can use a close combat attack. So we take a look at our profile. We have 3 attacks with our close combat attack here, and we have a strength of 4. So this means we now will get to go against toughness 3. We'll need 3s once again in combat. And you can see 2 of ours have failed here, but we have got a critical hit, doing another 4 damage. 4 plus the other damage we've done would equal over the 8. Thus, this would slay the enemy model. Enemy models, once they lose their last wound, are simply removed from the table. To note here as well, when you use the triple, you get rid of that triple. You're no longer able to use it for that turn. So it's worth mentioning these triples and doubles are a resource to be spent during the game, used when you want to do certain abilities. As another one of the actions we could make, we could choose to disengage if we wanted to use another shooting attack or potentially jump on an objective. A disengage is simply a move, but we may not end within half an inch of any enemy models. Thus, we're not allowed to be in close combat with any enemy models. This can come to times where you may not be able to disengage because you may be surrounded. You can disengage through any means. You can disengage by jumping down and making jump tests, which you can look up the full rules for later, but you can do disengages on however you want. So you can jump down, you could jump up if you have the movement to disengage upwards, any way you see fit. Lastly, you have the wait action. So waits are interesting. If you use them as your second action, they simply do nothing. However, if you use them as your first of 2 activations in your fighter's turn, they can then save their other action for later in the battle round. This means, especially when you're outnumbered by your opponent, and your opponent's going to get to make multiple activations at the end of the turn, in sequence normal, you're going to be able to interrupt that with your wait actions to thus maybe give you something to do during those later parts of the turn and not allow your opponent to overrun you. And so that is the basics on how to play Warcry. We'll go in some of the more nuanced things of the game in later videos, but that is the very bare basics on how to play this game. Effectively, every fighter will get 2 activations around. They'll be able to use abilities as per the rune marks on their card, and you'll alternate with your opponent in doing activations across different models in your warband. It's a fast-paced, bloody game with no armor save rolls, no wound rolls, just a singular hit, wound, and save roll, all melded into the one attack roll, which I find is really nice and really speeds up the game and making it a quick, enjoyable, bloody game. And so that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, leave us a comment and let us know what you liked about the video. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our fine community we've got going at Cinderful Gaming, you can do so by following the link in the description of the video to our Discord server. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel in another way, you can do so either by joining our Patreon or YouTube members. Our Patreon and YouTube members help decide what content we do on the channel. If you'd like to help support, that would be greatly appreciated, and we'd love to give a shout out to everyone who has helped support the channel via Patreon, and that is our patrons: Christian Weir, James, Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lyle, Outer and Shop First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Q Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, Donut226, Anton Nilsson, and JJ Austrian. And a special thank you to our YouTube members who, by the way, don't forget, when we've got live streams and in the comments, you can use our special emojis on YouTube. You amazing people. Thank you to our YouTube members: Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Steve T, The Real Zeop, Chris Wallace, Turai12, Vinny, Lock Lorick, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, and a special thank you to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel, and to Xmorphic, who does an amazing job at all the background work in our Discord server. Thank you to both of you. You do an amazing job and do so much for the channel. That's it for today, folks, though. Stay safe and stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.